We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant
It gives me great delight, O.J. and Nicole, to pronounce you husband and wife.
Does he know you're on the phone with the police?
No. You ever heard her?
Yes.
She was so happy. And that's the Nicole that we want to get out to the public.
The only people who heard all the evidence were the people who were sitting in the jury box. And in terms of the way Americans see the world differently, generally, based on their race, that troubles me.
O.J. Simpson has been charged with the murders of his former wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her male companion, Ronald Goldman.
The football star, movie star, TV sports analyst, commercial pitchman is described as armed and dangerous.
A warrant for the arrest of O.J. Simpson.
He is, in the street language, on the lam, or so police believe.
Let my kids live in peace from you, the press.
The police spokesman said, and I quote, O.J. Simpson is now a wanted murder.
I'm going to have to interrupt this call. I understand we're going to go to a live picture in Los Angeles. Police believe that O.J. Simpson is in that car.
95 million Americans watch the live television coverage.
They believe that this vehicle is registered to Al Cowlings, one of O.J.'s oldest friends, a teammate at Southern Cal.
Say not guilty. Not guilty.
Have you used that word in the past 10 years?
Not that I recall, no.
You mean if you called someone a you have forgotten it?
And that the EDTA was found on that the blood had been poured on the sock when flat.
Who am I? I'm still Johnny Cochran with a knit cap. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
I don't think they can stand the truth. That's what Jack Nicholson said.
Wasn't he the bad guy?
Yeah, but bad guys say something worthwhile sometimes, Your Honor.
All mic ready to go, I'm guessing. Cool. Okay, let's talk about OJ. Growing up in the 90s, I had obviously heard about the OJ case, even in Ireland. It was enormous, not just in the USA, but everywhere. I didn't really understand until recently just how big of a star OJ was.
Just a quick interruption to ask, if you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe and like. This channel is only small and every engagement helps YouTube to share it out, so I would really, really appreciate it. And secondly, I've launched a brand new newsletter which you can sign up for free, which is going to come out every week with insights into the topics that I cover in these videos, as well as behind the scenes looks at how they're created. And finally, some insights and interesting tidbits in the world of filmmaking and documentary filmmaking as I get more and more into it. I'm only scratching the surface, so I imagine I'll learn a lot more that I can share with you in the future. So the link for that is in the description below. You can sign up for free. And thank you so much for even just watching these videos. I really, really appreciate it. So let's get back to it.
I also really underestimated just how intriguing and complex and tragic this case was. So I wanted to really dig into the case, really understand every piece of it, and see how I would feel about the verdict this time, knowing so much more. And I guess that starts with knowing OJ.
Why would he do it? Why would he do it? Not O.J. Simpson, not the O.J. Simpson we think we know. But that raises another question, and that question is, do you know O.J. Simpson?
Hi, I'm O.J. Simpson. Now, you may know me as a sportscaster, a commercial pitchman, or an actor, but I also played some pro football a while back, but that was a couple of years ago.
How did you get your name? What was the selection process?
Arenthal James.
Arenthal James.
My mother has 4 sisters, and they had a rule that when each sister would have a child, one of the sisters would name it. And my mother's youngest sister named me, it was her turn, she named me Arenthal. She named my cousin Gersel. When it came time for her to name her own children, she said the deal is off, and she named her kids Stanley, Stewart, and Pamela.
You know, they made it orange juice once I got to the pro, in pro ball.
But that had nothing to do with orange juice, right? That had something to do with energy or something like that.
Yeah, I was always kidding around and, hyping things up and sort of juiced up, so to speak.
Let me ask you about your childhood. What kind of kid were you?
I was a good kid. I guess I got in trouble a lot. I was aggressive like most kids. I grew up in San Francisco at the absolute best time you could be growing up anywhere, as far as I was concerned. It was the middle of the 60s. All of a sudden, the beatniks were my age. They were hippies, and all the girls were running away, coming to San Francisco looking for places to live. Me and my boys would find them places to stay in the park.
You'd show them to the park, would you?
It was a great time to be in San Francisco. I was a little aggressive, got into a little trouble, but for the most part, sports pulled me out of it. So when I was a kid, my head was the same size as when I was like 10 as it is now. You know, I had skinny neck, skinny body, and the boys called me headquarters.
Cute, yeah.
When I got out of high school, I didn't get any scholarship offers. It wasn't because of my grades. I had pretty decent grades, but I was a home economics major. When I left high school, I couldn't read or write, but I can cook my butt off. You know? I went to City College of San Francisco, and it was a good time because a lot of guys were, you know, coming back from the Army, getting out of jail. So we had a lot of great players there, and we won a lot of games, and then all the schools were after.
Yeah, and I think every athlete thinks he can play longer. Right. But I don't think emotionally I've you know, realized yet that I'm retired and I'm not going to play again. I think every athlete, even the guys who play in the Super Bowl, you're glad the season is over.
We've seen him play football for USC. We watched him thrash UCLA and play in the Rose Bowl. We watched him win the Heisman Trophy. He may be the best running back in the history of the NFL.
And what are you going to be doing now with Bob Costas?
Well, we're going to be doing the Sunday pregame show, NFL Live. I'm looking forward to it because, you know, I'm one of these guys that every Sunday I got a house full of guys and we're talking about football. Now I have to come to New York and I get paid to do the same thing I would be doing in my living room.
We watched him leap turnstiles and chairs and run the airplanes in the Hertz commercials. And we watched him with a 50-inch afro and Naked Gun 33.5. And we've seen him time and time again. And we came to think that we know him. What we've been seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is the public face, the public persona, the face of the athlete, the face of the actor. It is not the actor who is on trial here today, ladies and gentlemen. It is not that public face.
Being wealthy, being famous cannot change one simple truth. He's a person, and people have good sides and bad sides.
Hey, I wish you much luck with the movie and your career, and thanks for all of the great moments you've given us all over the past few years in football.
And then there's Nicole Brown, the key victim in the case, and a person who was very much overshadowed during the coverage by the overwhelming celebrity of OJ. A stunning young, intelligent woman who unfortunately had her life ended too early.
Nicole, the second of 4 daughters born to Lou Brown, a Kansas Army boy stationed in Germany.
And there he met a beautiful young German woman.
The girls lived near Frankfurt until Lou Brown, now in the insurance business, brought the family home to a new house in California,
where they bought a beautiful house with a beautiful garden and a beautiful pool.
We had this big, huge garden, an enormous big garden with a big pool, and this is where they were raised.
And the family had the ideal upbringing, a loving, caring family of daughters who did everything together. Nicole being the only blonde and the one who worked the hardest.
Nicole was more serious, and Denise was always one who could say, it doesn't matter. And Nicole always needed to have, yes, it does matter.
She was also extremely bright. She had skipped the 4th grade and entered a class for gifted children.
She was a leader. If Nicole said it was okay, everybody else was okay.
A very bright girl would grow up with dreams of being a photographer.
Ever since my girls' drive, I was always afraid of getting this phone call. And every time there was a phone call late at night, I counted the rooms. Who is home? It happened. And I got it.
The key moment that would go on to define the story of Nicole Brown's life took place when she was only 18, working as a waitress, and stumbled upon serving a wealthy, famous older man who took an immediate eye to her.
After high school, while making her plans, she took a job waitressing in Beverly Hills. She was a stunning 18 when she caught a customer's eye.
It was the first date I ever had with Nicole. Very first date I ever had with her. The first night we ever went out.
Yeah?
We went to that house. It was all in shambles. I had just bought it, but that's where we went.
Okay.
It was first date, first night we were together.
Sometimes I'll try to sing, but I'm not going to do it tonight. I got this tequila in me. So watch her sing. Well, sing. She can sing simply. We're alive right now all across America. There she is, my woman. I'm taking her tequila. That's why I'm not singing tonight.
Thank you very much.
She called me and she says, Mama, I'm coming by with a friend of mine. And I said, fine. And she says, Mama, he's a black man. I said, that's okay. She said, you come by. Oh, she was totally in love with him. This girl was totally in love.
He was an exuberant star who expected her to look like one too. Yet she told her family they were so close, even in a crowd, they felt alone together. After 8 years together, when she saw him on the street with another woman, she laid down the law.
He went over there with a ring and, the whole 9 yards and asked her to marry him right then and there.
I found him to be very affable, very, very outgoing, very nice guy.
Yeah, we learned to love him.
And he became part of the family.
The two would go on to get married in 1985 in an understated and elegant wedding which took place in O.J. Simpson's Brentwood estate.
That's funny because I'm not.
Who's Mom?
Coffee! How do I look?
Woohoo! Yeah, where's O'Neill?
Did you see OJ?
Yeah.
Did you? Is he nervous?
It's
pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he's kind of.
It's funny because I'm just so excited. It's really weird. Dress is so near in at the bottom.
And then when you go over there too.
Doesn't she? Actually.
I, O.J., take you, Nicole. I, O.J., take you. I, Nicole, take you, O.J. May I be the first to introduce to you Mr. and Mrs. O.J. Simpson.
She was so happy.
His wife Nicole is expecting a child in October.
I feel excited, you know what I mean? After all, and Nicole and I were having our first little Libra.
I don't believe that I had this baby.
Oh, yeah, she's thinking about something real nice. She's thinking about what her daddy's rich and her mama's good looking.
She didn't like to be pregnant because she got fat. She says, OJ's the only person that I know whose wife is not supposed to gain any weight when you're pregnant.
And there's Mommy. Are you ready to go home, Mommy?
I'm so ready to go home.
I love you. I love you. Winnie.
I was just looking at the window waiting for you guys.
August 10th, 1988. Daddy looks pretty handsome at 41, doesn't he?
Nicole Simpson was first and always a mom. Always there organizing games, a day at the movies, or a beginner's trip down a ski slope.
You know what? You're going to love these tapes when you get older, especially when you have kids.
As the relationship went on, clearly there were problems. whether it was the controlling nature of OJ that we've heard so much about, or other things in the relationship that simply weren't working.
He was real possessive. She was his. He wanted her to be attractive, but for him, and that's as far as it went.
Tell you how smart I am. I'm dating my ex-wife. Somehow let's just say my wife.
Either way, the two of them decided eventually that a divorce would be the best path of action.
In January, it was January 6th of 1992, Nicole and I went to lunch and she informed me that she wanted to separate, not to have a divorce. She wanted to separate. She said there was nothing that I had done. As a matter of fact, she commended on me on my actions for the previous 2 years, but she felt that she just wanted to be on her own for a while. Of course, I attempted to talk her out of it.
However, they decided to give it another go for the children and try and make things work.
I told her that I was not interested in that time. I did love her. Over the next 3 months, Nicole was quite insistent. Nicole had convinced me that maybe we should try it again. And I told Nicole I would try it for a year, but there was a few.
Whatever her private reason, Nicole Simpson did try again.
For the next year, Nicole and I was together. You hear we were together and split up. That's not so. We never split up. It was a 1 year trial period. I set that time of 1 year.
The divorced couple, along with friends and the Brown family, went to Mexico.
And 1 year to that day, I told Nicole, after returning from Puerto Rico, and some things that took place that I can't even tell you about. Nicole was having some problems. I didn't understand them. When I came back, I told her that I just could not do this anymore.
But unfortunately, this retry didn't work out, and they ended up completely separating once again. However, they would keep in contact and stay close to one another in order to make sure that the children had both of them in their lives.
After the separation, Nicole Simpson first lived here on Gretna Green Way, and then here on Bundy Drive in Brentwood, both a few blocks from her husband so he could be with the children.
Nicole was never afraid that she always left her doors open. Until at the end.
Things weren't all well, though, in the relationship, and it seemed to go deeper than just a controlling nature or any level of jealousy. There were some serious domestic abuse problems in the house, and it became more and more obvious that OJ could be quite aggressive behind the scenes.
When the defendant and Nicole first met, she was barely 18 years old. He was almost 30. She waited tables at a restaurant. He was a millionaire. No one had ever heard of Nicole Brown, but he was one of the most recognized men in America. She shared an apartment with a friend. He got her own apartment. He bought her things. He gave her things. The time she was 19, she was driving a Porsche. He got it for her. He began to gain control over her. And throughout the years, throughout their relationship, he maintained that economic control over her, that financial control.
You heard Darden, jealousy, control. These were the things that he claimed led to me committing this crime. In the 15 years before 1992, Nicole never at any point in time ever gave me a reason to be jealous. That wasn't Nicole's style. If we had any arguments before that time, it was about things that I was doing, things, a lot of them I wasn't that proud of, but things that I had done during that period of time.
New Year's Eve, police found Nicole Simpson hiding outside, saying her husband threatened to kill her.
Oh, he's knocking on the locked door? 911 emergency.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back.
Well, okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record.
And while the line was open, at any point in time, could you hear anything?
Yes, I did.
What did you hear?
At first, I heard a female screaming.
This is a 911 radio call at 360 North Rockingham. Woman being beaten. The operator could overhear it in the, according to the comments, the operator could overhear the woman being beaten on the phone. I got out of the car and pressed the button and waited for someone to speak to me, and a female came over the speaker, said she was the housekeeper. I told her I was not leaving until I saw the person. Then
A woman came running out of the bushes to my left. She was wearing a bra only as an upper garment, and she had on lightweight sweatpants or night pajama bottoms. And she ran across and started yelling, "He's going to kill me, he's going to kill me." Then she pressed the button, which allowed the gate to open. She was shivering, she was cold, she was beat up. I said, "Well, who is going to kill you?" She said, "OJ." She said, "You guys never do anything. You never do anything about him. You come out, you've been out here 8 times. You never do anything about him." And I saw Mr. Simpson walking towards me from the house wearing a bathrobe. He said, "I didn't beat her, just pushed her out of the bed, nothing more." He said, "You've been out here 8 times before, and now you're going to arrest me for this?" As I was explaining to the supervisor what had transpired and what we needed to do, I saw a blue Bentley start up, the light start up, turned on, and it went out a driveway that I was not aware was there. It went out a driveway onto Rockingham, out another gate similar to the one I had been standing in front of, and the vehicle went southbound on Rockingham. We both re-entered our vehicles and pursued the defendant's Bentley.
He got away?
Yes, he did.
You ever strike her?
No.
Did you ever hurt her?
Yes.
Did you ever physically hurt her?
Yes.
When we look upon and look behind that public face, you'll see a different face. The face you'll see and the man that you will see will be the face of a batterer, a wife beater, an abuser, a controller.
Simpson was fined $700 by a Los Angeles court in 1989 after pleading no contest to wife beating. Recently, however, friends say the two had discussed a reconciliation.
Ron Goldman was the unfortunate bystander in all of this and was very much overlooked in the press, and at first was even reported as just an unknown victim. But he was a beloved son of the Goldman family and was only 26 years of age. Ron's family were from Illinois, and Ron moved when he was quite young to California to seek a career in modeling, was massively into sports, tennis, for example, and was by all accounts a friendly, outgoing, fun personality who was out to help people and just try and make his dreams come true. Similarly to Nicole. He worked as a waiter at the Mezzaluna and was friends with Nicole. Over the years, there's been much speculation about whether him and Nicole were romantically involved, but it seems to come to nothing. It seems that the two of them were just friends, and unfortunately for Ron, it was just very much wrong place, wrong time. Finally though, Nicole was free of OJ. She had her new life. They seemed to be all good and everything was going well, and the violence and abuse of the past was behind her. Unfortunately, that would all change in the most unfortunate and tragic circumstances in June of 1994.
Now, this is 10 Eyewitness News Nightcap.
Good evening. Former football great O.J. Simpson questioned for 3 hours tonight after his ex-wife and another man are found stabbed to death in Los Angeles.
The body of 34-year-old Nicole Brown Simpson, ex-wife of O.J. Simpson, was found after midnight
on a sidewalk outside Nicole Simpson's condominium, a few miles from where O.J. Simpson lives.
Next to it, the body of an unidentified 26-year-old man. Both had apparently been stabbed.
And on the night of the murder, Goldman was returning a pair of glasses that belonged to Nicole Simpson.
This is a horrendous crime. We have 2 people dead at the scene.
When police arrived at the townhouse on Bundy, the 2 children were asleep in their beds. They were taken to police headquarters and finally to their grandparents.
O.J., meantime, remains here in seclusion at his home. His lawyer says he is devastated by what has happened, and he had absolutely nothing to do with it. He was on a business trip to Chicago when the murders took place.
But they attended a dance recital together yesterday with their 2 children.
He's obviously shocked and upset, and just wants to do whatever we can do to find out who did this and, you know, make the necessary arrests.
They seem to get along on a more than cordial basis. The kids came first with respect to how they related to each other, and I know that he always referred to as one of the world's great mothers.
You know, Justin said to me, I believe in guardian angels because my mommy. He wrote her a little note and sent it up on a helium balloon. And he sent it up to Mommy. Mommy would get a message. You know, and he really believes that she's still here. She's our angel.
The 2 victims, Ron and Nicole, were found brutally stabbed and murdered outside on the doorstep of Nicole's home. This was a brutal crime, clearly one of passion, given nothing was stolen and the children were still in the home. And while there was speculation afterwards that there was drugs involved, the nature of the crime and the brutality of it very much set aside the idea that this was anything close to a professional hit on the wrong victims. Public pressure would mount very quickly to get answers. This was a well-to-do area in California and a very high-profile victim.
Obviously, we're not going to rule anyone out, and we will pursue whoever we need to pursue until we bring the party to justice.
OJ, are you a suspect? David, I told you before he wasn't going to say anything. I know you got to ask the question, but give us the break.
A police forensics team began a search of the crime scene and O.J. Simpson's home. Investigators removed several pieces of evidence from both properties. A blood-soaked glove, according to the Los Angeles Times, found at O.J. Simpson's home and believed used during the killings. A second newspaper reports the matching glove was found at the crime scene. Samples of reddish-brown stains on the driveway at O.J. Simpson's home. A pair of white tennis shoes believed to belong to O.J. Simpson, and a 4-wheel drive Ford Bronco registered to Hertz Rent-A-Car.
Earlier in the day, when he had been taken in for questioning by police, Simpson was initially handcuffed. But after his attorney talked to police officers, the handcuffs were taken off. Authorities say Simpson left Los Angeles later that night on a flight to Chicago. The following day, police searched the hotel room Simpson stayed in near Chicago's O'Hare Airport. When contacted by police about his wife's death, authorities say Simpson returned to Los Angeles voluntarily.
His attorney arrived here at the house this morning and left after about 20 minutes.
I wanted to relate that at the time that this murder took place, O.J. was at home awaiting to get into a limousine to take him to the airport on a trip that had been planned well in advance for a promotional event in Chicago.
I'm not going to be negative to him. I mean, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to let O.J. stand as O.J. the man. I'm going to let him be the man that he's always been.
Heard it, and first thought was no way. There's no way it could happen.
No, because he had a promising future. He's never really been in trouble. He does a good job, and it's just too bad.
O.J. was quite a role model, and then after football, he was quite a role model. I hope that he's not the person that's involved.
I hope it isn't true. Simple as that. I just hope it isn't true.
I think the people of Buffalo, because he's a Hall of Famer, they should give him the benefit of doubt.
He's a man who I respected both professionally and personally.
I feel so bad, and as a mother especially, I feel sorry for his children.
I'm a firm believer in it, but when it's somebody that you grew up idolizing, all of a sudden it takes a different turn. It shouldn't matter, but, you know, it takes a different turn.
As the police began to dig into the murders, O.J. very quickly became their prime suspect. And an obvious motive for a killing like this can be financial. And everything from the outside would seem perfectly fine for O.J. Simpson when it came to finances. He was a huge star, getting paid huge amounts of money. But he was also spending a fortune.
Football star, sportscaster, actor, and businessman. You would think finances would be the least of Simpson's troubles. It now appears he's had money trouble in the month before the murders.
Simpson was paying Nicole Simpson $24,000 a month in alimony and child support. Other financial concerns, the mortgage on his $5 million Brentwood home. At the time of the murders, his $500,000 contract with a rental car agency was due to expire in a couple of years. A $400,000 a year contract with NBC Sports had been cut once. Movie offers were slow in coming, and a just completed pilot for a possible TV series got the cold shoulder from the networks. Simpson lost a once popular chicken franchise after the LA riots, and he was forced to close some of his honey-baked ham stores.
Natalie, I'm outside the LA County Courthouse. Anticipation is swirling around the courthouse that O.J. Simpson could be indicted today or tomorrow.
I said, do you have anything to do with that?
And he said?
He said, no, I loved your daughter.
And the police started to uncover more and more evidence at the scene, which would narrow down their focus to more or less primarily OJ. But the case would then take another dramatic turn.
From Fox Television in Washington, D.C., this is the 10 o'clock news.
Good evening, I'm David Burnett.
And I'm Morris Jones. Where is O.J. Simpson?
Detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department, after an exhaustive investigation, which included interviews of dozens of witnesses, and a thorough examination and analysis of the physical evidence, both here and in Chicago, sought and obtained a warrant for the arrest of O.J. Simpson, charging him with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Lyle Goldman. The Los Angeles Police Department right now is actively searching for Mr. Simpson.
A surprising, stunning development in the still unsolved murder of O.J. Simpson's former wife and her male companion.
Unbelievably, the most watched, most wondered about man in America has gone missing tonight. He apparently disappeared from under the noses of his lawyers and doctors this afternoon, dodged an arranged surrender, and vanished into the Los Angeles haze.
As you can imagine, the police were absolutely fuming. They had arranged a more quiet and understated arrest for OJ as a privilege and a favor, and it had been thrown back in their face.
In agreement with his attorney, was scheduled to surrender this morning to the Los Angeles Police Department. Initially, that was 11 o'clock. It then became 11:45. Mr. Simpson has not appeared.
He is, in the street language, on the lam, or so police believe.
A former football star gave Los Angeles police the slip, a fugitive from justice facing charges of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole, and a restaurant waiter.
Mr. Simpson is a fugitive of justice right now. And if you assist him in any way, you are committing a felony. Think about it. We will find Mr. Simpson, and we are going to bring him to justice.
The man who eluded so many on the football field is now on the run from the police.
Simpson has been charged with 2 counts of murder. Police say the charges against Simpson include a special circumstance allegation. What that means is that he could face life in prison or the death penalty.
He was last seen this morning leaving his Brentwood mansion in the black Mercedes owned by Robert Shapiro, his attorney. We believe that's when he was last seen.
OJ, wherever you are, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your children, please surrender immediately.
I'm very confident we're going to find O.J. Simpson because this is a man who can't hide too easily. I mean, his face is well known to millions of people.
Given that you have a 72-hour window, given that you yourself are going to be argued that he's a flight risk, why not take advantage of that time frame?
You're making it too simplistic. What happens if you make the arrest and the blood comes back? Oh, it doesn't connect him. Then we're on a vendetta. Why? No, you have to.
You had information beyond.
That's not true. We don't. This has been very enjoyable. But
What do you make of this thing?
I tell you, it's one of the most bizarre things that I've ever heard of. But I guess in time, the truth will let us know what really went on.
I'm just completely shocked that a man of this stature and representative of this country the way he is. I'm really shocked that this man could do that.
I just hope he can run as fast now as he used to be able to.
Meanwhile, his lawyers and close friend Robert Kardashian had found a suicide note left behind as OJ went out the door with AC.
Attorney Robert Shapiro painted a picture of a man on the brink of suicide, yet O.J. Simpson was able to disappear from a safe house just 15 minutes before the police were to arrest him.
OJ was downstairs, and at the time that I was getting the message from Los Angeles Police Department, he was wailing.
Oh boy, I don't know how I ended up here. Please remember me as a Jew. Please remember me as a good guy. Don't remember me as one of the negative that might end up here.
Before leaving, Simpson handed an updated will and 3 sealed envelopes to another friend, Robert Kardashian. He read one of the letters to reporters.
I think of my life and feel I've done most of the right things. So why do I end up like this? I can't go on. No matter what the outcome, people will look and point. I can't take that. I can't subject my children to that. This way, they can move on and go on with their lives. Please, if I've done anything worthwhile in my life, let my kids live in peace from you, the press.
A lot of confusion and many questions as to why O.J. Simpson was not already in custody, why he wasn't under constant police surveillance. Those questions in the main are unanswered as of this moment.
Simpson's attorney says he's keeping his fingers crossed and praying that O.J. will turn up alive.
I'm going to have to interrupt this. I understand we're going to go to a live picture in Los Angeles. Is that correct? Okay. This is Interstate 5, and this is courtesy of KCALR, one of our LA affiliates. Police believe that O.J. Simpson is in that car. They believe that this vehicle is registered to Al Cowlings, one of O.J.'s oldest friends, a teammate at Southern Cal.
The search for O.J. took an enormous twist, and a very public one, as 90+ million people watched live on television as O.J. Simpson sat in the back of AC's Bronco and a slow-speed chase unfolded on the highway. This was such big news that the NBA final was put in a small box on live television as the main story of O.J. unfolded. This was the perfect evidence of just how big of a star O.J. Simpson was and how big of a downfall this is.
They're going south through Orange County, but nobody is pulling this car over. And we could only guess as to why not.
All right, I guess they're just being
They
careful.
may fear that there are arms in that car. They may fear that Simpson may harm himself. Now, police radio is saying that Simpson has a gun at his head. Reuters is reporting that the police tracked O.J. Simpson through his cellular phone.
One thing we have been noticing, again, it's a very slow pursuit, followed by numerous highway patrol vehicles. But because of the intensity, it seems like people have heard about what's going on. At this point, it is a pursuit. And unfortunately, it has a lot of mitigating circumstances because of the high profile of O.J. Simpson.
It is an amazing sight. Along the right-hand shoulder, people have pulled over, many of them carrying signs such as signs reading things like "Save the Juice," "Go OJ." People are literally cheering him on as he travels northbound on the 405, and we can only assume that he plans to get off at sunset and go towards perhaps his home.
That's a helicopter reporting, talking to KCAL, saying, look at all those cars on that bridge looking down. This is living drama. There's nothing else you can say, but we're going to stay with it.
His friend, A.C. Cowlings, is behind the wheel.
This is AC. I have OJ in the car. He's still alive, but he got a gun to his head.
Yeah. Just let me get to my house.
Okay,
please.
we're going to do that.
I swear to you, I'll give you what. I'll give you me. I'll give you my whole body.
Okay.
I just need to get to my house.
Okay.
Where I live with Nicole.
We're going to do that. Just throw the gun out the window.
I can't do that.
We're not going to bother you. We're going to let you go up there. Just throw it out the window. Please, you're scaring everybody. Toss it, please. Too many people love you, man. Don't give it all up. Don't hurt everybody.
You're gonna hurt everybody.
I'm just gonna leave. I'm just
No,
gonna
don't.
go with Nicole. That's all I'm gonna do. That's all
Hey,
I'm trying
listen.
to do.
Think about everybody
I
else,
just
all
can't
right?
do it here on a freeway. I couldn't do it in a field. I want to do it at her grave. I want to do it at my house.
You're not gonna do anything. Too many people love you. Your kids, your mother, your friends, AC, everybody. You got the whole world. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away, man. Come on. OJ?
One of the icons of American sports history, O.J. Simpson, on this tragic June day. O.J., you were a man, you are a man, be a man, turn yourself in. They're going to go right toward the Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Brentwood areas where O.J. lives and where the two people killed also lived.
He's on the off-ramp now, coming up the off-ramp at Sunset.
That's
He
right.
looks like he's in the left lane now.
Yeah.
Making a left turn. The intersection is free and he's clear, and now making his left turn westbound on Sunset.
All right.
We're hearing the sirens. The police have their sirens on. Both sides of the street have pedestrians.
All right,
They just passed us at Barrington.
Remember, there are people there in that mansion, and I don't think law enforcement wants any kind of siege to take place. Then again, it is possible he may have said on the phone, all I want to do is see my mother and children, and then I will surrender. So that is also a point for speculation.
The slow chase would end all the way back in OJ's Brentwood mansion.
Okay, we're following not only black and whites with their sirens on and their lights flashing, but again, there's about 10 private citizens on motorcycles who have joined the pursuit as well.
Unbelievable developments in the search for O.J. Simpson. Police chase him and his closest friend. A police chase, a tense standoff, and a dramatic conclusion.
And he is pulling in to the driveway.
Coming around.
Someone is going to the door right now, Eric.
AC Cowlings, who was still in the car with O.J., desperately pleading with O.J. not to kill himself.
No, please. Listen to me, O.J. Listen to me. O.J., no, O.J.
And as they tried to talk down OJ and get him out of the car, there was a bigger and bigger mounting concern that this would escalate into a very bad and possibly violent situation. And the police decided to cut the power, which cut all of the light, so that the media in their helicopters and surrounding couldn't get a good look of the situation unfolding.
Well, there's clearly negotiation going on, regardless of what he said or not. They're not just sitting there looking at each other, I can guarantee you that.
The instant that the authorities believe this coverage is detrimental, then we will stop this coverage. Okay, Al Cowlings being used up to this point as a verbal intermediary, and now apparently as a physical one as well. And Al Cowlings is seeing his friend now threatening, at any rate, certainly by implication, to kill himself, and trying desperately to keep that from happening.
This is Larry King in Washington, staying atop this scene, now night in Brentwood.
Finally, though, OJ stepped out of the car and gave himself up to the police.
Now, O.J. Simpson, we understand, has surrendered to police. He has been taken into custody outside of his house. Now, this all started earlier today when O.J.'s lawyer pleaded with him to give himself up.
And police take him into custody, arresting him on murder charges.
Mont and the rest of the journalists who covered this all day long, and to our aerial views that carried us with Al Cowlings and O.J. Simpson through 2 counties, through his home, and finally to arrest tonight.
O.J. Simpson is in the custody of Los Angeles police and under a suicide watch.
A bittersweet ending to the latest chapter in the tragic tale of what O.J. Simpson called in his letter, a man lost.
95 million Americans watched the live television coverage.
He apologizes to me and to everyone else for what he put people through yesterday.
Within the past hour, as you probably heard, the district attorney in Los Angeles County, Gil Garcetti, announced that there is now sufficient evidence to proceed with the prosecution of O.J. Simpson.
This case became so interesting because the legal teams ended up being as big in their celebrity as the defendant. The team that OJ gathered to defend him in this double murder case became known as the Dream Team. It was one of the best legal teams you could put together at the time. And of course, that was the case. Of course, OJ would get the best legal team possible to defend him, not only because he was wealthy, but because he was such a star. The modern equivalent of this would be if Tom Brady was on trial tomorrow. This was going to be a big case, and the legal team was as important as the defendant.
And if anyone ever tried to harm my kids, I'd kill that person, give my bloody clothes to an old football buddy, and hop on a plane to Chicago.
Convincing the jury of O.J. Simpson's guilt or innocence will be up to these two teams of legal heavyweights. Leading the prosecution is Marcia Clark, a steely prosecutor who has tried over 20 murder cases. Clark shares responsibility with William Hodgman and Christopher Darden. Hodgman is best known for winning the conviction of savings and loan financier Charles Keating. Christopher Darden, a 14-year veteran of the district attorney's office, will lead off the state's case.
He is represented by many attorneys.
The defense team, often called O.J. Simpson's Dream Team, is headed by Johnny Cochran, a powerful Los Angeles attorney known for representing high-profile clients like Michael Jackson and Reginald Denny, the truck driver beaten in the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Cochran is assisted by an all-star cast of lawyers. Robert Shapiro, who initially headed Simpson's defense team. Famed criminal defense attorney F. Lee Bailey. Former law school dean Gerald Ullman, and Cochran's junior partner, Carl Douglas.
Robert Kardashian, part of Simpson's legal dream team, was next to his friend nearly the entire trial.
Whenever it was bad news, I had to tell OJ the bad news.
Thankless job.
Thankless job, very much so.
Who made the most money?
Robert Shapiro.
How much did he make?
Our deal with him was $1 million to $100,000 a month. Also, Johnny Cochran related better to Mr. Simpson.
And Cochran also knew how to win over the predominantly African-American jury.
But then I got a call from Bob Shapiro saying you have to join the team because it's a death penalty case. He's facing the death penalty. And I have a policy of never turning down a death penalty case, so.
Great All-American hero, one of the greatest football players who ever lived. First time DNA was ever used in a trial of any significance.
The dream team was not a dream team. It was a nightmare team. Very few of us got along with each other. When I first heard about the murders, the morning it was reported, I went on television and I said I thought he was probably guilty. It's usually the spouse who does it. And he had a history of assaultive conduct.
The culmination of the murders, the fame of OJ, and the legal team headed up by Shapiro and Cochran really did bring out a media frenzy. And this was probably the most interested in a trial that the public had ever been. The cameras would be there every single day capturing the action.
A few of the board take time for a nap, while the chorus line of reporters outside the criminal courts building give live analysis.
Simpson sits at the defense table wearing a dark suit and tie and a grim expression.
Stain and fiber evidence is substantial enough. That's Nicole's mother and sister.
Write down 1058.
Did you get that?
But it wasn't just the legal team of OJ who were ready for a bitter fight here. The prosecution had put together an enormously strong case. The prosecution knew that this would be a tough one to argue, especially given the legal team that sat across from them. But they were ready with a strong case, a bulletproof case in many ways, which had a strong foundation of circumstantial evidence, of witnesses and so on. But on top of that was even more rock solid, as it was built on strong forensics. And a picture of the day leading up to the murders themselves, and the aftermath started to unfold before the eyes of the public in the trial.
Of course, the day of her murder, I saw her at a recital. I spoke to Nicole. She called my office. She wanted to make sure that I would be in town for my kids' recital and how many tickets that I might need. She saved me a seat that was 2 seats from her. I sat 2 seats from her.
Afterwards, Nicole invited her parents and sisters to dinner at Mezzaluna.
I spoke to her family. Other than asking for my ticket, I didn't speak to her.
He looked a little depressed when he walked away.
When that affair was over, I was outside talking to friends, talking to Dr. Fishman, teasing with Lou Brown, certainly not having any kind of dour personality, not being angry. Fortunately, there was a video that proved that.
She said to me, she says he won't say, he wouldn't even speak to her. She says, yeah, he didn't say hello. She says he just doesn't say hello, he won't talk to me.
She was in great spirits.
Oh, she was in such a good mood.
Best we'd seen for weeks.
And she looked the best.
And we walked one way to the parking lot, and she walked off with her children. They were going to go get some ice cream. Very happy. It's the way I would want to remember her.
Here's Nicole's condominium, 875 South Bundy. Here's the defendant's residence, 360 North Rockingham. Brian Kalin, known as Cato, was living in one of the guest units behind the defendant's home on Rockingham Avenue. This location here, this area here, is the main house. Now the guest units close off. They're locked off with a door so that you can't enter from the guest unit into the main house. Now the Rockingham address also had a gate that opened onto Ashford Street on the north and a gate that opened onto Rockingham on the west side. Now while the defendant is talking to Cato on Rockingham, Nicole and her party arrived at the Mezzaluna for dinner to celebrate Sydney's recital. Ron Goldman was a waiter at the Mezzaluna. Nicole was wearing a black halter dress and a black blazer. She left the restaurant with her family at approximately 8:30 p.m. Now between 8:30 and 9 p.m., Cato was back in his room, and the defendant came out to his room to ask him for some change. He then told Cato that he was going to go out and get something to eat. Cato asked if he could come along. The defendant drove to McDonald's in his black Bentley. What was he wearing at that time?
The best of my recollection, I thought it was a sweat outfit.
Okay, what color was it?
Dark color.
As the defendant drove, sir, were you able to see his hands?
Yes.
See any injury to them?
No.
Any bleeding from either hand?
No.
They got some burgers, and as he drove back, the defendant ate his food while he was driving. Cato did not. They got back to 360 Rockingham, and the defendant parked his Bentley in the driveway in the same position in which it was found by the police in the early morning hours of June the 13th. When Cato got out of the car, it was 9:30 to 9:35 at the latest.
You left your glasses. I left my glasses. And I called.
Telephone records show she placed the call to her daughter at 9:40 p.m. Judy Brown says Nicole told her a young man, a waiter named Ron, could bring the glasses over to her.
They were, familiar with each other because she ate there.
So you didn't know if there was romance or what there was?
I don't think so. I asked Sydney, have you ever heard the name Ron? She said no.
At 9:37, Juditha Brown, that is Nicole's mother, called the Mezzaluna to see if they had found her prescription glasses that she thought she had left there at dinner that night. Now, Juditha called Nicole at 9:40 p.m. and told her that the glasses had been found and were being kept at the Mezzaluna. And that was the last time Juditha ever spoke to her daughter, Nicole. A few minutes later, Miss Crawford received a call from Nicole, and they spoke. Miss Crawford then called Ron Goldman over to the phone. Ron Goldman spoke to Nicole for a few minutes, and when he was done and he hung up, Miss Crawford gave him the glasses, and he took the envelope containing those glasses. Shortly thereafter, at approximately 9:50 p.m., Ron Goldman left the restaurant, still dressed in his waiter's uniform, the white dress shirt, the black pants, and the black shoes. And his friends at the restaurant never again saw him alive.
A difficult day for jurors in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. A coroner showed them how he believes Nicole Brown Simpson was viciously slashed to death.
The murders themselves were pieced together by forensic experts and put together in simulations using what at the time was cutting-edge computer simulations.
The night of the murder, the tree provides incredible shade and it's extremely dark. At this point, Mr. Goldman comes up to the gate and rings the doorbell. Nicole Simpson leaves to come down and open the gate. Literally, the assailant has to come from the patio area, or the physical arrangements of the subjects make no sense.
It was a brutal killing where Ron Goldman put up a strong, valiant defense, but unfortunately was overpowered by the attacker and stabbed multiple times. And then the killer turned his attention to Nicole Brown Simpson. And the murder was so chilling, even though the public were watching this unfold on television during the trial, all efforts possible were made to ensure that only the jury would see the gruesome murder scene photos and that they wouldn't leak to the public.
The assailant notices he has lost his wool cap. This was very, very dark, and it's a dark wool cap. He's trying to feel for the wool cap. Can't feel anything through the gloves. He has to take the gloves off to feel for the wool cap. By taking off both gloves and not being careful about it, he actually ends up leaving a glove behind and not retrieving the wool cap.
Steve Schwab left to take his dog for a walk at approximately 10:30. At about 10:55, he saw Cato the dog walking alone. He noticed that there was blood on the paws and on the legs of the dog. And the dog looked up the pathway. And that made Sukru look up the pathway. And there he saw a sight that he'll never forget. Alan Park, a limousine driver, was on his way to Rockingham to pick up the defendant to take him to the airport, where he would take his flight at 11:45 to Chicago. Now, although his instructions were to arrive at Rockingham at 10:45, he hadn't been in the Brentwood area before, and he didn't want to be late. So he left early. And he arrived at Rockingham at 10:25. And at 10:35, he decided that he would go and look at the Rockingham gate to see if that drive-in would be easier for him than the Ashford Street. Now, in doing that, he had to pass right by the curb area just north of the Rockingham gate. And what he noticed when he pulled to that area is that there was no white Ford Bronco. Was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by at about 10:22?
I didn't see it.
Now, this is the Rockingham gate to my home. One thing Alan said was when he drove up this street, he didn't notice any cars on Rockingham, and he did not notice a Bronco. He also, more importantly, stated that he didn't notice this Bronco when he drove out of the Rockingham gate at a time when I think everybody agreed that the Bronco was there.
He looked down the driveway, and he saw that that looked like a tighter turn even than Ashford. So he backed the limousine up Rockingham Avenue and made a left turn onto the Ashford Street and pulled right up to the Ashford gate. At 10:40, he began to ring the buzzer. He could hear it sound, but there was no answer. There were lights on in the upstairs, one light on upstairs. There were no lights on downstairs. Now, during this period of time, Cato is still in his room on the phone with his girlfriend, Rachel. This area here is shown. This is the southern border on the defendant's property. This is a walkway here, but it's not like a sidewalk. It's very narrow, and it's very dark.
You see the thickness of the foliage here. It would have been pretty difficult to come over this wall, this fence.
Here you can see what's indicated as an air conditioner. I don't know if you can all read it, but that's what's written here. There's a little black box here. There's no entry or exit there. He can't go out that way. If he wants to exit his room, he has to exit through the doors that are right here. At 10:45, Cato was talking to his girlfriend Rachel when suddenly he heard on the wall where the air conditioner was 3 loud thumps.
Here we have this air conditioning unit, which we've heard a lot about.
The thumps were so loud that a picture on that wall actually moved. Can you demonstrate for us how loud it was?
Somewhat, yes.
3 loud bumps, sort of like that. I don't know what that could have been, but he never said that he heard anyone hit this air conditioning unit.
He was worried about the sounds he had heard. He was worried about those thumping noises. And so he decided that even though he was afraid and it was late at night and it was dark, he should go and see what the cause of those noises might be. When he came out to that side yard, he saw the limousine that was pulled up to the Ashford gate. But he figured that the defendant had already made contact with him, was about to let him in anyway, and didn't pay any further attention. In the meantime, just before Cato came out onto the side yard, Alan Park was standing at the Ashford gate ringing the buzzer, and it was 10:52. He saw a person 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, wearing all dark clothing, African American, walk quickly up the driveway and into the front door entrance. Can you tell us if that appears to be the size of the person that you saw enter the front entrance of the house at Rockingham?
Yes, around the size.
The facts are, at no time, I should say, did Alan Park indicate that he saw anybody climb the wall, come down a driveway, cross a lawn. What Alan Park testified to, that there was a person that was right about here. He put an X on an exhibit to prove it.
It was about there, around that area.
Immediately, as that person entered the house, the downstairs lights went on.
How can she say that? That's not true. It's impossible to tell if any lights are on in my bedroom. As a matter of fact, I think I can turn on 90% of the lights on in my house, and from the street, you would not notice that. Can't tell when lights come on all over my house.
Alan Park hung up the phone and walked over to the Ashford gate and buzzed again. This time, he got an answer.
He told me that he overslept and he just got out of the shower and he'd be down in a minute.
Defendant was now wearing a light blue denim shirt and light blue denim jeans. As he came out, Cato also noticed that there was a small dark bag placed near where the Bentley was parked. He could see that there was a small dark bag on the grass near that Bentley. It was Alan, Park, and Cato who were loading all of the bags into the limousine. And while they were loading the bags into the limousine, Cato spoke again of the thumps that he had heard, and being worried that it was a prowler, thinking it might have been an earthquake, hoping, I guess, it was an earthquake. So he asked the defendant for a better flashlight so he could go around to the back area and check out the source of those sounds again. He and the defendant then walked into the house very briefly, but then the defendant said, "Oh, it's late, I gotta go." While they were loading the bags, Cato offered to go and get that small dark bag on the grass and put it in the car for the defendant. Unlike any of the other bags, the defendant said, No, I'll go get it. You offered to get it?
Yeah.
And what was his response?
He'll get it.
What did he say?
I'll get it.
He went and got the bags. The defendant got the bag and put it into the car. The defendant then left at 11:15. During that drive to the airport, Alan could see that the defendant was moving around with his bags in the passenger compartment, although he couldn't see exactly what he was doing. They arrived at the airport at 11:30. This leaves us between 9:35 and 10:45 for the defendant to drive from Rockingham to Bundy and back, a total of 12 minutes, which leaves him a full hour. The case was assigned to the Robbery Homicide Division. Detectives Philip Van Adder and Tom Lang, the investigating officers assigned to handle the case. They determined that they would go and make notification to the defendant. Now, they got to the defendant's house at approximately 5 a.m. At that time, they started to ring the Ashford gate, and they buzzed, but they got no answer. Now, at that point, they could see there were lights on in the house, there were cars in the driveway, but no one was answering. Then the detectives saw the white Ford Bronco parked at the Rockingham gate. The detectives noticed that there was a small spot of blood near the driver's handle of that door. Inside the vehicle, they saw in the rear cargo area, they were able to see a package that was addressed to Orenthal Productions. Knowing that that was the defendant's first name, they realized that was probably his car. After all they had seen, they decided they would enter the property to see if they could locate someone or find perhaps another victim. Cato told the detectives about the loud thumps that he had heard. The detectives went out to look to see what could have caused those noises. And there's the glove where it was found, in the very same location in which it was found that night,
Right down here, about 4 or 5 feet from this unit, is where they found, or where they claim to have found, the glove.
Right next to the air conditioner on that narrow path. When he walked out onto the driveway, what Detective Van Adder saw, now that it was becoming light, were blood drops that led from the Bronco and all the way into the house.
2 blood drops were found. Here's one here, and then there's other cards going towards the front of the house. None of these blood drops go in this direction to the side of the garage where Mark Furman allegedly found the bloody glove.
Having seen all of this, the detectives then realized that this was not just an occasion to make notification, that in fact they had uncovered evidence that indicated that the defendant had committed these murders. They secured the home and prepared to conduct a search.
On Sunday night, O.J. Simpson was taking off in the red eye in first class. 20 minutes later, his ex-wife and a friend were found dead outside her home in the Brentwood section of Los Angeles. At 6:15 Monday morning, Simpson checked into the O'Hare Plaza Hotel.
Oh, hi there.
That's when he got the call from the Los Angeles Police Department telling him his wife and her friend were murdered.
I think the first words out of his mouth were something to the effect, "Oh my God, Nicole is killed," or "Oh my God, she's dead."
Did Mr. Simpson ask you how she was killed?
No.
Did he ask you when she was killed?
No.
Did he ask you if you had any idea who had done it?
No.
Did he ask you where it had occurred?
No.
Did he ask you anything about the circumstances of how his ex-wife had been killed?
No.
The call lasted about a half an hour, with police telling Simpson they wanted him back in Los Angeles immediately for questioning. It was then that Simpson's attorney says O.J. shattered a bathroom glass in anguish and cut his hand, dripping blood on the floor and on his sheets. At 9:15, O.J. was on American Flight 1293 headed back to Los Angeles.
I do feel some guilt. I feel guilt because Nicole wanted to move in with me. She made that clear to me and everybody many times during that year from 93 to 94, and I refused. I feel guilt about a lot of those things, but I do not feel guilt for the murder of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. I did not do that. I swear before God, I did not commit these crimes.
The prosecution focused the majority of their efforts in the forensics, in the latest scientific studies of evidence. This was the first ever case, or the first big case at the very least, to have DNA at its core, at its center. And there was a lot of it for them to go through, and a solid foundation of blood evidence as well, some of which was incredibly difficult for the defense. Anyone watching it, I'm sure, would find it very, very hard to overcome that blood evidence.
There will be a complete picture that will be simply overwhelming and undeniable of the defendant's guilt.
But the biggest problem was the blood. Simpson's blood at the crime scene, Nicole's blood found on Simpson's sock in his bedroom, most damaging, Ron Goldman's blood in the Bronco, and the blood of all three found on the glove at Rockingham.
How did the DNA, the blood evidence, affect you?
Barbara, that was the most devastating part of the whole trial for me. I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm so conflicted because of that blood evidence. It's very difficult for me.
The ski cap that was found at the feet of Ron Goldman was examined for hair and trace analysis, and it was found on that knit hat that there was fiber like those from the carpet of the defendant's Ford Bronco. On the shirt of Ron Goldman, we find a head hair like that of the defendant. On the glove found at the defendant's home at Rockingham, we find hair like those of Nicole Brown, hair like those of Ron Goldman, fibers like those from the shirt of Ron Goldman, and fiber like those found in the carpet of the defendant's Ford Bronco. The item number 31 on the console, consistent with a mixture of the defendant and Ron Goldman. This blood stain was on the console. This was recovered later in time, after the 14th. That is consistent with a mixture of the defendant, Ron Goldman, and Nicole Brown. The blood stain found in this area marked with the number 33 matches Nicole. This is the blood spot number 7 we showed you before, close up, matches the defendant. The socks that we indicated earlier to you were found in this condition, thrown hastily at the foot of the defendant's bed in his bedroom. The blood on those socks was analyzed. It was determined that the blood on one spot matched the defendant. The blood on another spot matched Nicole. The glove that was found at the south walkway of the defendant's property at Rockingham revealed blood that was consistent with a mixture of Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown, and the defendant.
It was perpetrated by one person.
And what is that based on?
I observed one distinct set of bloody shoe prints between both victims, leading away from both victims west on the sidewalk, away from the location.
Detective Mark Furman, a 19-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department, takes the stand.
Yes, that appears to be the vehicle that I saw parked by the Rockingham gate that morning. I noticed that it was just parked just a little askew, a little strangely. I continued walking down the path, and when I got approximately 15 or 20 feet away, I saw a dark object. It appeared a dark leather glove. It appeared to be somewhat moist or sticky.
How many gloves did you see then?
One.
You ever see 2 gloves at this location?
Not at Bundy, no.
What did you see?
A brown leather man's right-handed glove. That's the original location in the glove that was pointed out to me that morning. He became a suspect as soon as I saw the glove. And then after coming out into the driveway and finding the blood trail, he became a very strong suspect. I walked to the Bronco to have a closer look at the Bronco to see if there was any other blood I could see there. I looked in from the passenger side of the vehicle and observed what appeared to be a blood smear along the passenger side of the console.
I looked at it and it looked reddish, brown and translucent qualities to it, and it appeared to be dried blood.
And what appeared to be blood on the inside of the driver's door of the vehicle.
You ever see anyone wipe a bloody glove around inside that vehicle?
No. It appeared that he had an injured knuckle on the left middle finger of his left hand.
Did you consider that significant at all?
Oh, I certainly did, yes. He had the injury that was that would have caused those blood drops on the left side of the bloody footprints.
Is Mr. Simpson then included as a possible donor of that blood stain?
Yes, he is. Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman are excluded, and Mr. Simpson is included as a possible donor. That set of characteristics would occur in approximately 1 in 170 million individuals.
Dr. Cotton tells the jury that the chance the blood on the sock is anyone other than Nicole Brown's is 1 in 6.8 billion. Sims says the statistical chances the blood is anyone other than Goldman's is 1 in 1.2 billion, and that this glove also has a mixture of the defendant's and both victims' blood on it. Blood on the instrument panel matches the defendant. Blood on the steering wheel matches Nicole Brown Simpson and the defendant. And blood on the center console matches the blood of both the victims and the defendant.
What you have here is a trail of blood from Bundy Drive to Rockingham Avenue and into the defendant's very bedroom, linked by the defendant's white Ford Bronco. And the results of the analysis of that blood confirms that on June the 12th, 1994, after a violent relationship in which the defendant beat her, humiliated her, and controlled her, after he took her youth, her freedom, and her self-respect, just as she tried to break free, Orenthal James Simpson took her very life in what amounted to his final and his ultimate act of control.
The defense had their work cut out for them here. This was going to be a very difficult case, but the defense decided that their case had realistically started building way back in 1992.
Dramatic videotape obtained by Channel 5 News shows what appears to be a group of LAPD officers beating a suspect.
As soon as it hit the airwaves, it created a firestorm.
State police clock King's car going 110 miles per hour and immediately start a nearly 8-mile high-speed chase through LA neighborhoods.
And my face was facing this way so I could see him. And they said, no, put your effing head down, face down.
His skull fractured, bones and teeth broken. He was left with permanent brain damage.
I thought they were going to kill me. That's what I thought.
And at some point, you have to look at that video and say, enough is enough.
Let's talk about the beating of Rodney King. The question of justice, whether Rodney King's federal civil rights were violated. What you saw and what I saw on the TV video was revolting. I felt anger. I felt pain. I thought, how can I explain this to my grandchildren? And I know good and decent policemen who were equally appalled.
Then there was the matter of moving the trial from Los Angeles County to Ventura County, one of the whitest areas in California.
This was a managed and controlled use of force. It followed the policies and procedures of the Los Angeles Police Department and the training.
More than a year later, the jury returned its verdict.
For 14 months, they waited, patiently, hopefully. They waited for the system to work. And when the verdict came in, they felt betrayed.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Stacy C. Kuhn, not guilty.
All 4 officers were acquitted.
When people had expected some type of justice, when it didn't happen, it was like another blow. It was like, black lives don't really matter.
So these people, this is not an organized effort, you're telling me?
This is not an organized effort. These are concerned citizens. We are the people. We are Rodney King's peers.
All of a sudden, I flipped the channel, and here's the not guilty. I started crying. I mean, that hurt because it was like it happened to me. I could have been his sister.
It has a bad image for the rest of white America that wants to say this isn't right.
One question on everyone's mind is, how did this jury see the same videotape that the world saw and reach the conclusion that no crime was being committed?
It was almost like a volcano, absolutely. I felt like it had been rumblings, it was almost inevitable.
The rioting, burning, and looting began at the corner of Florence and Normandy.
It was storming in there.
Well, so far, I've seen no aggressive moves on the part of the officers. They seem to be just standing their ground, Linda.
Rioters took to the streets.
What began just over a year ago with the beating of one man continues tonight with parts of Los Angeles in flames.
Get off the streets, drive away. You'll be subject to arrest.
The predominantly black South Central part of Los Angeles was neglected, plagued with unemployment, poverty, and suffering through the crack epidemic.
There will be as many as 750 California Highway Patrolmen.
National Guard troops rolled into town to help restore order.
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
It lasted for several days.
Since the Rodney King beating, the Los Angeles Police Department has made few changes in its use of force policy.
When it was over, 50 people were dead and more than 2,000 hurt.
Johnny Cochran was an incredibly talented and incredibly intelligent man who had his finger on the pulse of society. And he knew exactly which buttons to press in this case. And he knew the only way they would win against such strong forensic and DNA evidence was with emotion. And the first hint of that was during the jury tour to O.J. Simpson's house and to the murder scene.
I was in here sleeping when the murders took place. Yeah. My proof? That's my bed.
The entire trial goes on the road, so the jury can see 875 South Bundy Drive, where Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were murdered.
Before the jury was brought to see Simpson's Rockingham estate, Cochran, Kardashian, and the rest of the defense team gave Simpson's house a complete makeover.
Little escapes the watchful eye of lead prosecutor Marcia Clark.
They went in and they remade that house. As one source told me who was there, the white women came off the walls and the black women came marching in.
Johnny Cochran decided that the best way for them to win this case was to put the LAPD itself on trial.
To believe that O.J. Simpson is truly innocent, you have to believe that the LAPD conspired to frame him.
What she did not tell you was that there are trails
that lead toward innocence, and they were not pursued.
First, Courtroom would lean into the idea that as soon as there was a racial element in this case, the police officers on site immediately began planting evidence to justify their case against O.J.
Now, did you experience any disappointment whatsoever when Phillips told you you were being removed from this murder case?
Well, I was disappointed we lost the case.
Sure. Did it go a little further than that, Detective Furman?
No, not at
Weren't
all.
you a little bit angry that you were being shoved out
No.
for murder in your own territory?
No.
Didn't bother you a bit?
None.
How about a couple of gloves, Detective?
Excuse
Did
me?
you see a couple of gloves up there?
No, I saw one glove.
One very interesting thing about that glove, there was no debris on it. There was a lot more here then than there is now. Furman saw it. He said it was still wet. There was no possible way 7 hours later after this crime that glove could still have blood on it, could still be wet and still be bloody.
Did you wipe a glove in the Bronco, Detective Furman?
No.
You did not?
No.
Isn't it true that the only accounting for time that is recorded is the time the blood was drawn, which you say is 3:30, and the time that you logged in at Rockingham, which is 5:20, almost 2 hours?
That's correct, yes.
The defense implication? In those 2 hours, police officers had enough time to plant O.J. Simpson's blood on the evidence.
It was F. Lee Bailey, though, who would bring out what was perhaps the most famous line of questioning from this case. When he started to question Mark Furman, the detective who had found the glove, about whether he was a racist. And he would do this in a very vocal way. And this would set up things for an interesting turn of events later in the trial.
I want you to assume that perhaps at some time, since 1985 or 6, you addressed a member of the African American race as a. Is it possible that you have forgotten that act on your part?
No, it's not possible.
Are you therefore saying that you have not used that word in the past 10 years, Detective Furman?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And you say on your oath that you have not addressed any black person as a or spoken about black people as in the past 10 years, Detective Furman?
That's what I'm saying, sir.
So that anyone who comes to this court and quotes you as using that word in dealing with African Americans would be a liar, would they not, Detective Furman?
Yes, they would.
All of them, correct?
All of them.
One of the key pieces of evidence was bloody socks found in O.J. Simpson's bedroom. And the defense would push hard that these were planted and that the blood itself was poured onto the socks, which was backed up by a certain chemical being found in the blood.
And then I determined scientifically that he was being framed. That doesn't mean he wasn't guilty, but I can say that the evidence was overwhelming that the police tampered with a piece of evidence, the sock.
So I believe it was your testimony on direct examination that you collected the socks sometime between 4:30 and 4:40.
About then, yes.
This is the room and this is the area basically where the police claim to have found the socks. Even they admit that these socks seem somewhat out of place. Throughout this trial, we asked for film. Was there any film taken? Now, months and months later, we're looking at some still pictures. And lo and behold, what do we see in one of these still pictures? A picture of a videographer in this house taking pictures. A videographer named Willie Ford, a police officer, was here at 4:13. He photographed the entire room. He didn't see any socks. No one told him to try to avoid stepping on any socks.
See that carpet there, that rug, right in front of the bed?
Yes.
Saw that rug that particular day, did you not?
Yes.
And in fact, you walked past that rug when you went into the other room, into the bathroom area, didn't you?
Yes.
Any socks on that rug that day, Mr. Ford?
No.
You didn't videotape any, there were none there, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
If there had been socks there, you would have taken photographs of them or video.
Yes.
Their excuse was a police officer said he threw it in his drawer and he forgot about it. He forgot about it.
There was a chemical, EDTA, a blood thinner, which if it appeared in the human body would be enough to bleed somebody to death, and that the EDTA was found on the sock. The blood splatter evidence proved conclusively that the blood had been poured on the sock when flat.
Do you have an opinion on whether the EDTA found on the sock and the back gate in the quantities which they were found if that could have come from a purple top tube?
Yes, of course it could.
Is it your opinion that the bloodstains on the sock and the gate had to have come from the preserved blood to the exclusion of all other sources?
I didn't say that. I said that it's sort of like you hear hoofbeats, it's probably horses and not zebras, is that the most likely source for EDTA in a blood sample, when you have a control that is negative, is that it was EDTA blood to begin with.
Cochran then leaned in to OJ himself, the photos of his body and the lack of bruises and wounds that one would expect from the altercation with Ron Goldman and the brutal murder of the night before. The cut on OJ's finger, which is what allegedly caused all of the blood drops, then was also brought into question by asking other passengers on the plane if they had seen cuts on OJ's hands.
There will be other.
The jury also views a series of photographs of the former football star's stripped-down body. What Johnny Cochran wants them to see is what isn't there, bruises.
He was very pleasant, smiling. I noticed his clothing was very well pressed. I didn't see anything unusual, no Band-Aids, no large abrasions or anything to that effect.
You see any cuts at all?
I didn't see any.
See any blood on his hands?
No blood.
I saw his left and right hand.
All right. And did you notice anything unusual about either his left or right hand?
I did not notice anything unusual.
Did you see any cuts on either his left or right hand?
I don't think so, no.
Pushing for every flaw and issue they could find with the uncovered blood and DNA evidence.
That there was blood under Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's fingernails. It came back a type B in an EAP genetic marker. And the blood on one of the knives found also was this type B, similar to the blood that was found under Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's fingernails. You would expect that blood would be of the perpetrator since it's not hers. And that does not fit the genetic profile of Mr. Simpson, Mr. Goldman, or Miss Brown.
A lot of talk about the mixed blood stains that were on the console. You realize there was only 7/10 of 1 drop of blood on that console. I can literally sneeze in my hand, rub it around that console, and you would probably have more DNA.
The blood voluntarily given by a defendant mysteriously disappears when it should be there is devastating evidence that something is wrong.
All of this blood constitutes less than 15 drops of blood.
But Mr. Sims, do you know from your own personal knowledge how and when that blood got on the sock?
No.
It was in this area that Detective Van Adder claimed that he turned over my reference vial to Dennis Fung.
And finally, it seems to me that the fact that blood mysteriously appears on vital pieces of evidence, and it's predicted what the results will be regarding DNA when that evidence is still in the police lab, is devastating evidence of something far more sinister.
Incidentally, they checked all of these items, the doorknob, the light switches, as we move over to my staircase, the rug, my banister, checked all of these items for blood, and of course, no blood found.
Cochran and Shapiro then leaned in hard on the LAPD and questioned the motives of the officers jumping over the fence into OJ's estate on the night of the murders. They say that they did this after discovering the blood on the Bronco and therefore entered searching for further victims or for an assailant who perhaps was targeting OJ after the murders. However, if they arrived on the location thinking of OJ as a suspect, then that would put into question all of the evidence that they had gathered in the estate without a warrant.
Now, this is my bedroom. Incidentally, I believe this is a book that every American should read.
Did you tell Larry Fiato that you went to Rockingham because OJ was a suspect? The husband is always a suspect on the 18th floor of the balcony while smoking a cigarette in February of this year.
Again, if something is taken out of context, I don't have a specific recollection of making that statement. I don't believe I did make that statement.
When you walked out there, you heard Detective Van Adder make a statement to Larry Fiato, isn't that correct? Can I answer that yes or no?
Yes.
And what statement did you hear Detective Van Adder say to Larry Fiato?
Something to the effect of not going up to the house to save victims and that he was a suspect.
Johnny Cochran was willing to turn over every stone and push every button in front of the jury, while he was pushing the narrative that there was a cohesive conspiracy with the entire LAPD coming together to work against OJ and make sure that he went down for the murder. He was simultaneously pushing the idea that the entire LAPD and its forensics department were incompetent by saying that they had blundered the forensic investigation and contaminated all of the evidence.
Now, your laboratory has had at least a couple of instances where you had false matches due to sample handling error and cross-contamination, isn't that correct?
And with all of your training, experience, education, can you tell us with a reasonable degree of medical certainty how many people are responsible for these homicides?
No. Have you an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty about contamination at the LAPD DNA laboratory?
Yes.
What is it?
I found that the LAPD laboratory has a substantial contamination problem that is persistent and substantial.
Is the LAPD, in terms of levels of contamination, worse than any other forensic laboratory you've ever seen?
Definitely.
Assuming that Mr. Simpson had been in the Bundy residence, had sat or lay on that blanket, shed hairs on that blanket, and that blanket was taken, put in the middle of this crime scene, that would be what is known as contamination of the crime scene.
Yes.
That's a terrible mistake from the point of view of a criminalist, isn't it?
Yes.
That laboratory is a cesspool of contamination. All of this evidence collected, whether at Bundy or Rockingham or wherever, went through the LAPD lab.
The defense has built its case around the idea that there was a racially motivated conspiracy to frame O.J. Simpson. The audio tapes will certainly serve defense purposes.
I think that the ruling in North Carolina today by the North Carolina Court of Appeals is probably the key, most important ruling in the case thus far, from the standpoint of Mr. Simpson.
Audio tapes existed of Furman using the N-word in interviews with a screenwriter who was researching a movie about cops.
Tapes of Mark Furman using the N-word, something he had vehemently said he hadn't done.
Judge Ito allows defense attorneys to play the hate-filled Furman tapes.
You're trying to find a bruise on a pretty tough, huh? Basically working practice movements. Where is it? I just practice my kicks. You know why we stopped the show?
Tell me.
We stopped the show because a bunch of these organizations in the South End, and because all out and killed 12 in 10 years. Really extraordinary, isn't it? First thing, anything out of a for the first 5 or 6 sentences is a fucking lie. That's just right out. I'm the key witness in the biggest case of the century, and if I go down, they lose the case. Glove is everything.
I am deeply offended, and I'm shocked, and I'm disgusted with what I've heard.
I don't understand why the hell we had to listen to 2 hours of this hate. It's disgusting, every word that was said. But there's no reason that it had to go out on public airways all day long, and more to come.
During the time that you talked with Mr. Furman, during this 10-year period of time, did he ever use the racial epithet, which I'll call the N-word, during the course of your conversations with him?
Yes, he did.
Can you tell the jury how many times you've counted that he used that word?
Approximately 42. He said that if, when he sees a black man with a white woman driving in a car, he pulls them over. And I just said, well, what if they didn't do anything wrong? He said he'd find something.
Officer Furman turned around, looked at me,
and told me, I told you we get you.
Mark Furman took the stand once again.
Detective Furman, was the testimony that you gave at the preliminary hearing in this case completely truthful?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Have you ever falsified a police report?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Is it your intention to assert your Fifth Amendment privilege with respect to all questions that I ask you?
Yes.
I only have one other question, Your Honor.
What was that, Mr. Furman?
Detective Furman, did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
It just, in the minds of the jury, confirmed what we had been trying to prove, that the LAPD commit test-lying, that is, that they committed perjury on the witness stand, and that they tampered with evidence. So it was a gift.
We all know what they want is to inflame the emotions of the jury and to inflame anyone's minds, the public's minds, with issues that don't relate to this trial. Ron and Nicole were butchered by their client.
It should be said that Mark Furman did defend these tapes by saying he was helping with a screenplay, but the damage was done. Mark Furman's words had been heard by the jury. Of the nearly 300 days of this case, there is a moment that stands out above them all. A defining moment in the trial, and the first memory for anyone if you bring up the OJ trial. And that is, of course, OJ trying on the gloves.
During 1990, I'm in Aris isotoner leather-like gloves, brown in color, size extra large, that Bloomingdale's purchased.
Approximately 300.
Have you ever seen it sold anywhere in the world other than in Bloomingdale's?
No, I have not.
So the gloves I showed you in court today then fit the descriptions given on the sales receipt?
Yes.
And is there a signature on the credit card receipt?
Yes.
Can you read that signature to us?
Nicole Brown.
New pictures of OJ at work, wearing brown gloves in wet weather that looked remarkably like the infamous murder pair. Photographer Bill Rankin took this photograph at a Cincinnati Bengals playoff game in 1991. But this one was snapped just 6 months before the murders, where the New York Giants play in New Jersey, by Deborah Gurdera. The parade of photographers presented the defendant as America remembered him. But clearly OJ did not seem pleased, even when the photograph showed black gloves.
We would probably not have asked him to try on the glove. Chris Darden was so arrogant that he decided to do it in front of the jury.
At this time, the people would ask that Mr. Simpson step forward and try on the glove recovered at Bundy as well as the glove recovered at Rockingham.
And I think so the jury can see, I'll ask Mr. Simpson to stand. That's People 77. This is People's 164A. Is that the right-hand glove? All right. Thank you, counsel.
Could we ask him to replace the left glove onto his hand?
All right.
Could we ask him to straighten his fingers and extend them into the glove as one normally might put a glove on?
Yeah, I object to this statement by counsel.
All right. He appears to have pulled the gloves on, counsel. All right, would you show that to the jury, Mr. Simpson, in that manner? Thank you. Other hand, please.
Can we ask him to make a fist with his left hand while the glove is on his arm? Can we ask him to make a fist with his right hand while the glove is on his arm?
He is doing both.
Can we ask him to grasp an object in his hand? A marker, perhaps.
All right, Mr. Simpson.
Can we ask him to grasp the marker in his hand like this?
I object to this, Your Honor.
Yes,
Object.
I agree.
Counsel,
Can
go
we
ahead.
ask him to completely grasp the marker?
Your Honor, I'm very pleased to say that we have no further testimony to present at this time, and as difficult as it is, the defense does rest at this point. Thank you.
The mountain, truly, the giant mountain of evidence that we have produced in court over these many weeks points to only one person, and we know who that person is.
Well, I think that we did pretty well, so I'll put it that way. We did pretty well on their case.
He suggests that racism ought to be the most important thing that any one of us ought to listen to in this court, that any one of us in this nation should be listening to. And it's because of racism we should put aside all other thought, all other reason, and set his murdering client free. He's a sick man.
It was time for the prosecution and defense to face the jury for one last time to make their closing arguments.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, you have been through so much. You have made a tremendous sacrifice. And all of this in the name of justice, in the service of justice. Did he lie when he testified here in this courtroom, saying that he did not use racial epithets in the last 10 years? Yes. Is he a racist? Yes. Is he the worst LAPD has to offer? Yes. But the fact that Mark Furman is a racist and lied about it on the witness stand does not mean that we haven't proven the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If I were asked to put on the gloves, the bloody gloves that were used to murder the father of my children, I would not be laughing. I would not be mugging. I would not be playing games. From 9:36 until 10:54, the defendant's whereabouts were unaccounted for. It's his blood. Nobody else is on the planet. No one. You see rage. You see fury. You see overkill. These are murders that are really slaughters, that are personal. I want to hear Mr. Cochran actually stand up in front of you and tell you he believes the blood was planted. I want to hear that, because that is incredible. When you think about that, think, what evidence have you been given to show you how that blood was planted, to show you when that blood was planted, to show you who planted that blood? Now, the problem with it really is, though, you have to buy the planting theory. You have to buy this far-out idea, because otherwise, if you don't, he's guilty. He's got Ron Goldman's blood in his car. What's it doing there? That's it. He's guilty. So they have to find an excuse. And that's why you have this flailing about. You have contamination, you have planting, you have contamination and planting and or planting. You've got everything to explain it all away. Everything. We've proven the opportunity to kill. We've given the time window in which he was able to kill because his whereabouts were unaccounted for. We have the hand injuries that were suffered on the night of his wife's murder. His reaction to Detective Phillips when he made notification, when Detective Phillips said to him, "Nicole has been killed," instead of asking about a car accident, the defendant asked no questions. We have the manner of killings, killings that indicate that it was a rage killing, that it was a fury killing, that it was not a professional hit. The manner of killing that indicates one person committed these murders, one person with the same style of killing. We have the Bruno Mali shoe print, size 12, his size shoe, all of them consistent going down the Bundy walk. We have the Bundy blood trail, his blood to the left of the bloody shoe prints. We have the blood in the Bronco, his and Ron Goldman's. We have the Rockingham blood trail. We have the Rockingham glove with all of the evidence on it. Ron Goldman fibers from his shirt, Ron Goldman's hair, Nicole's hair, the defendant's blood, Ron Goldman's blood, Nicole's blood.
He's a murderer. He was also one hell of a great football player, but he's still a murderer.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. They allowed this investigation to be infected by a dishonest and corrupt detective. Because of their bumbling, they ignored the obvious clues. Because of their vanity, they very soon pretended to solve this crime, and we think implicated an innocent man. If you take the witnesses who we presented, who stand unimpeached, and if you are left with dogs starting to bark at 10:35 or 10:40, let's say, and we know from the most qualified individuals, this was a struggle that took from 5 to 15 minutes, it's already 10:55. And remember, the thumps were at 10:40 or 10:45. O.J. Simpson could not be guilty. He is then entitled to an acquittal. If he went in that house with bloody shoes, with bloody clothes, with his bloody hands, as they say, where's the blood on the doorknob? Where's the blood on the light switch? Where's the blood on the banister? Where's the blood on the carpet? It's like almost white carpet going up those stairs. Where's all that blood trail they've been banding about in this mountain of evidence? Perhaps the single most defining moment in this trial was the day they thought they would conduct this experiment on these gloves. They were going to try to demonstrate to you that these were the killer's gloves, and these gloves would fit Mr. Simpson. You don't need any photographs to understand this. I suppose that vision is indelibly imprinted in each and every one of your minds of how Mr. Simpson walked over here and stood before you, and you saw 4 simple words. The gloves didn't fit. This man cannot be trusted. He is central to the prosecution. And for them to say he's not important is untrue, and you will not fall for it. Because as guardians of justice here, we can't let it happen. When you're lying at the beginning, you'll be lying at the end. The book of Luke talks about that. Talks about if you're untruthful in small things, you should be disbelieved in big things. Furman and Van Adder, twins of deception, will bring you a message that you cannot trust.
The most likely and probable inference is the one that is not for the timid or the faint of heart. Somebody played with this evidence. And if that can happen, that's a reasonable doubt for this case. Period. End of sentence. End of case. There is something wrong. There's something terribly wrong about this evidence.
Now put this knit cap on. And you've been seeing me for a year. If I put this knit cap on, who am I? I'm still Johnny Cochran with a knit cap. And if you look at O.J. Simpson over there, and he has a rather large head, O.J. Simpson in a knit cap from 2 blocks away is still O.J. Simpson. It's no disguise. It's no disguise. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
After this, the jury went to deliberate. The public speculated on how this would end. Opinions were split in the media and in homes across America, as the government feared that this could end just like it did in 1992 with more riots. Things would take a crazy turn, though.
Something utterly unexpected.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we were taking our brief recess, Mrs. Robertson advised me that you buzzed 3 times and indicated that after receiving the verdict forms that you have reached a verdict in this case. Is that correct, Madam Foreman?
The swift verdict stuns O.J. Simpson, but he will have to wait 19 hours to hear the outcome.
The jury, who had sat listening to this case for 266 days, would return with a decision in only 4 hours.
We'll accept the verdict from you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
No one knows what this means.
Quick verdict, what does it mean?
That a quick verdict, in fact, means an acquittal, because it's hard to imagine a jury deliberating after 2 hours to send someone to prison for the rest of their life.
All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter.
150 million people are watching and waiting.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least 1 crime of murder of the first degree and 1 or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this 2nd day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes. All right, counsel. Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please? Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please. Mr. Cochran, do you waive reading of the verdict as recorded? Yes, we do. Ms. Clark, thank you.
A jubilant Simpson rejoicing at his acquittal.
Yes! 474 days after being arrested, O.J. Simpson was a free man. And opinion to this day is still split among people. And after watching basically the entire trial again, which took a while, and going through all of the evidence myself and seeing as much of what the jury saw as I could, I have to say I can kind of now understand why the decision came down when perhaps I didn't in the past. I think he did it, personally. That's my opinion, and I think the forensics lay that out. However, the evidence that there was some sort of tampering in the case, and just the evidence around Furman and so on, regardless of what we know now, makes me completely understand why the jury came back the way they did. Because even though for me, the forensics of the blood inside the Bronco is the nail in the coffin for his argument, I think the questions of the police hopping the fence perhaps before they should have, and some of the evidence being questionable and the handling of the evidence being questionable is enough for reasonable doubt. But that's what made this case so riveting. The fact that it wasn't simple and it wasn't as straightforward as I had once thought. But as with all true crime cases, regardless of how intriguing they may be, they are also incredibly tragic, as 2 people were taken far too young.
We said that if we could shatter the prosecution's timeline so that O.J. Simpson couldn't have committed this crime, that there would be a reasonable doubt. That's even before we ever got to the socks, the glove, and Furman or anything else.
Credibility was always an important issue in this case. Initially, when Mark Furman denied ever using the N-word, knew, as the rest of the world knew, that he was not telling the truth.
We are, all of us, profoundly disappointed with the verdict. This was an emotional trial, and apparently their decision was based on emotion.
Please don't let this make you lose faith in our system.
But I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second.
O.J. killed everybody in that driveway. Let's just, to hell with all this. O.J. killed both them people.
O.J. Simpson served only 108 days longer than his jury. He spent 474 days in jail. The jury lived under lock and key 266 days. In exchange for their service, each juror was paid $5 a day. They've been gone so long, that added up to about $1,300 each.
How are you?
I'm doing fine, and one, I want to thank you a lot, because so many of my friends have told me that you've been fair in hosting your show and bringing the points of view from both sides. Most of all, I want to thank that man, Mr. Johnny Cochran, for believing from the beginning, listening, and putting his heart and soul on the line to send me home and spend time that I'm spending right now with my kids.
Well, there is a party going on here, as David Bloom said, Tom. There are helicopters overhead trying to get any glimpse of O.J. Simpson that they possibly can. O.J. Simpson's sisters came out a little earlier in the day, thumbs up to the media, thanked everybody.
And as he celebrates at his home tonight, what is the future for this most famous murder defendant ever, now that he's free?
We wouldn't have had any of this happen, of course, but there were happy days, beautiful days.
Dying buildings painted pink by the setting sunlight.
People should know those. They should get to know the real person rather than the one that has been portrayed in the media.
I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
The jurors could soon be cashing in on their stories. We're told the tabloid The Globe has been offering jurors as much as $120,000 for the inside scoop. The Globe says no deals are done yet, but who knows?
The only people who heard all the evidence were the people who were sitting in the jury box. And in terms of the way Americans see the world differently generally based on their race, that troubles me.
Yeah.
I think the only answer to that is for us to spend more time listening to each other and try to put ourselves in each other's shoes and understand why we see the world in different ways.
O.J. Simpson leaned over and whispered something in your ear. What did he say?
You had told me this would be the result from the beginning. You were right.
Furman became the only man convicted of a crime arising out of the murders. He was sentenced to 3 years probation for perjury.
I think that he wanted to believe in O.J.'s innocence so badly.
The blood evidence is the biggest thorn in my side. That causes me the greatest problems. So I struggle with the blood evidence.
But you know, I think we're very lucky. Each one said, I love you. Not many people are that lucky. Those were our last words.
every telephone conversation would end with, I love you.
I love you.